Really want to know about Jeremy? Jeremy Carlson?
And he still owes me money.
Here's the real scoop on Jeremy Carlson.
My name is Jeremy Carlson, and I was born in Greensburg, Kansas in 1975. I began this journey into car audio in 1992 in my parents' garage in Salina, Kansas. From a very early age, I'd always had an interest in woodworking or anything my grandfather was working on at the time. Little did I know when I started, I would have used as much knowledge as my grandfather had taught me along the way. This passion I had at such an early age led me down to the path into car audio. While most kids my age were getting their first cars, partying, and just being kids, I was in my garage building boxes, experimenting with paints, and learning how to carpet. This led me to working with my friends' cars and my own. As I learned more and more and time went on, I knew this was more than just a hobby. I received an internship my senior year in high school at a local shop called Precision Sound. Brian Feltz was the owner and was doing high-end Iasca-style installs. I was able to work there throughout my senior year of high school. As I went through college in Manhattan, Kansas, I worked for Audio Junction as a lead installer and continued my passion for custom work. Once school was over and my parents had moved to Florida, my mother's health was poor. I decided to follow them to help take care of her. Once in Fort Myers, Florida, I landed a job with Sounds in Southwest Florida. Not only was it the biggest shop in Florida, but I was able to work with the biggest name in our industry at the time, David the Fishman Rivera. After a few years it closed, I moved to Daytona Beach with my new wife Stephanie, and worked at a local shop. It did not take long for the Installer Institute to find me and hire me to teach advanced fabrication classes. Metra, our mother company, then took me into regional sales and then into product development, show car builds, and trade show builds. After 8 years, the economy took a crash and there was cutbacks. I then went to a local shop, the legendary Soundcrafters. I was hired as the manager to overlook the company. I made several changes for the better before a local rep told me about a shop 2 hours south that was hiring with the name Extreme Performance. Well, I have been at Extreme Performance for over 4 years now. I am the general manager of Extreme and our sister company, The Experts, a high-end home theater company. I still enjoy working on high-end installs for high-profile clients and teaching my knowledge to my employees every day. I am married to my beautiful wife, Stephanie. We have 2 awesome daughters, Madeline, who is 10, and Mia Grace, who is now 5. After 2 decades of doing what I do, I still have the drive and passion. This comes from a great family who has been patient and very understanding over many late nights and big builds. I look forward to the next 20 years, and this is what I do. Well, this is Pocket Change, a 1969 Camaro. I chose this as my main project as it represented a bit of a departure. It is not a big, complex build. On the face of it, it's a radio, 2 amps, 2 sets of speakers, and a couple of subs with some wiring and custom work. That custom work, though, entails building an entire interior from scratch, and teaching a new hire how to run the ShopBot as I build and then as we build. So I get a finished project and the employee with another skill set to put to work for me. The clients, 2 separate ones in this case, get what they want, and the industry increases its talent pool and the next generation that will have to take over as guys like me get older. My friend Jeremy Miranda brought me this beautiful 69 Camaro that his crew at Miranda built had restored, so that I could help them design a system to put in it. The cabin being bare metal, though he and I got with the car's owner to work out the design for the whole interior, which I would then construct as well. Some of the challenges encountered in this build were the usual ones, such as space. You think if you were getting to build an interior, space wouldn't be a problem, but the front speaker location was dictated by its chassis. Miranda's plans with the other aspect of the build, and as always, what the client wanted. With the trunk being tubbed to accommodate the rear tires, and with some of the performance gear having to be relocated there, the trunk got very small on us. And with respect to the interior build, it had to be built around a roll cage, which made getting some of the panels to look good and fit right and exercise was fun. The external appearance of the car, as well as the immaculate engine work, provide a lot of cues on the look of the interior. Miranda had incorporated a series of mesh grilled circular cutouts in the engine bay and also along the rear deck. I used this pattern on the doors and also on the center console, and decided to backlight them with soft white LEDs. On another occasion, the gauge cluster was fabricated per the design of the client and designed, approved, and then we even had it rendered. Then, when I fitted it into the dash and stared at it over the hood, I realized it did not look right at all. It clashed with the hood and the hood scoop, so I designed an entirely new cluster housing it to better cosmetically blend and start over. A big aspect of the build that consumed a lot of time was the teaching part. I had just added Justin Marks from Atlanta, Georgia, to our roster. Justin is an accomplished tech overall and a skilled fabricator, but he had not previously used a CNC machine. A lot of people look at our CNC ShopBot as the holy grail, or even cheating, and while it certainly is an invaluable resource, it's simply another tool. It still has to be wielded. Our audio manager says, even if you hand me Lucille, I still can't play her like B.B. King plays her. The point being that until it's programmed, it doesn't do anything. And the quality of the nature and the programming will determine the quality of the work it outputs. So the goal was to teach the CAD programming, how the machine interprets and outputs the programming, and how this can drive your design process and the ability to do things that were previously impractical. No better way to do all of that than during a real complex build. So with that, I started to work, with Justin watching every step, every mock-up, every mouse click, and every test fit. As work progressed, I would ask, what should I do next? And eventually had him doing the programming under my supervision. Well, I started this project starting with the dash. I figured it was going to be the hardest component and wanted to start there. I started by building a wood and PVC and Bondo dash that resembled the final shape that I was looking for. Once the dash was completed, the sanding was done, and primer was sanded, I knew that I had pulled a mold of it. The reason I wanted to pull a mold was because I didn't figure a $200,000 car needed a bunch of MDF, PVC all super glued together in the dash to make it the final piece. From the mold, I pulled the reverse of the dash, giving me what would be the final mold of the dash I was to pull out of that. In that final piece, I took black polyester primer, primed the inside of it as of a gel coat we use on a boat. Once I pulled that out of the mold, you'll see the dash sitting in the car is all black. That's the original polyester primer. That gave me my final fiberglass piece, about a 1/4 inch thick. It was all polyester primer on the front and solid fiberglass, which gave me a great base to start the dash from to build the bottom and the rest of the car. To accommodate the gauges chosen, which were originally going to be twin cans, I temporarily wrapped a couple pieces in approximate size PVC in leather, the leather used being wrapped the rest of the car in. Although cans weren't going to be wrapped in the final piece, the dash would be, and this would have allowed for the additional space for the leather itself once it was wrapped. You can see I made a jig to hold the cans tight and straight and true from the front and from the back. Once the gauges were in and done, we didn't like them, and neither did Miranda, so they came out. In the end, a different look along with a center vent ended up being the ticket. This, along with several other parts, will be shot gray to match the leather in the final round of painting. Well, the rear of the car proved to be more of a challenge than we had originally thought. The roll cage was a hassle. Everywhere we turned, the cage was in the way. So we had to create an interior that went around the roll cage, yet looked like a high-end, high-dollar car in the end. We started with the wheel wells and moved to each side into the rear speaker locations. You'll notice in the pictures there's pieces of ABS on each side of the center piece. That's for gapping. We actually milled the ABS down to give us our two thicknesses of our leather for two pieces of leather put together, so that the final product, everything would fit tight. You'll notice all the panels in polyester primer in the very end. This is so we can block sand every piece as if we were going to paint it. We ended up wrapping the entire pieces to give us a flat, smooth finish. After we had built the rear of the car, we moved to the center console. That was the one piece that we had to connect the rear, which we had just built, to the dash, which we had built originally. The console started out as a piece of single 3/4 inch MDF that was bolted to the factory floor using rib nuts. From there, that was our base we built up. The piece you see in the picture has the holes in it, is actually part of a 3-piece system that starts below that. Started out with a piece of 3/4 inch plexiglass, milled with the CNC in where the window switches go, and where the AC controls go, and where the holes go. It was a complete system, all connected with neodymium magnets. So that when it was all done, the painted piece would snap in and never have a problem of falling out. You'll see the magnets on the back of the picture with the piece folded up. Also notice how the window switches and the AC controls are flush in that piece of plexiglass below it. So when it's all done, it looks like it flows from one piece to the next piece, without gaps, without voids. In the front of the console, I took the original shifter, which was electronic, drew it in CAD, and cut it out with a piece of plexiglass, and it has the letters on it for the shift, the park, drive, etc. Right behind that, you'll see where we flushed in, on an angle, the start button. The entire car is electronic start and electronic shifting. The next few slides will show kind of just the finished pictures of the car as it sets. It's about 95 or 97% complete. If you think back to where we started with a blank interior, no headliner, no cell panels, no A-pillars, all made from scratch. With the roll cage, we could not just use a normal headliner either. It had to be custom made as a one piece, opposed to the bar system that came stock in 1969. But notice the trunk carries the theme as the rest of the car does. The carpet in the trunk and the car itself is actually out of a Mercedes. And then you'll notice the theme of the holes and everything. That was a theme that the Miranda had started as they built the car. The holes in the doors, the center consoles, in between the two rear tubs in the back and the trunk, all illuminate and all have the same mesh that they used when they built the rest of the car. Some of the design features that we tried to follow besides the holes was the flow of the car, was the front to back and overall theme. In this project, a 20-inch LCD panel being fitted into a Maybach 62S limo. The client has sent us a couple of these with the exact orders to replicate as closely as possible the $20,000 factory 20-inch Cine-Screen option. Challenges exist on several fronts: matching the shape and sourcing the Napa leather for a color and grain match, making it durable and reliable, and getting new screen to work with a highly complex stock Mercedes-Benz electronics so that it can now show video from the existing DVD along with the existing screens. Here you can see the LCD's mount being test fit into the divider. Plexi was again chosen for the durability, machinability, and I just wanted structural parts to be made out of something appropriate for a $425,000 car. So tap Plexi and bolts it is. The mount is several pieces made on the CNC and then assembled. Note the Maybach logo etched into the Plexi during the machining. Maybach locates a lot of things behind the divider, so if someone has to take my work down to access any of these things, even if they know it's not a factory installed part, I want them to respect my work and be impressed knowing I respected the vehicle and worked to maintain its integrity as I added to it. A little further along on the second one, I now have to some of the trim in the panel in place for the verifications. It consists of MDF and a section of PVC pipe to create the nice radius on the back of the top. More of these little neo-magnet service fasteners so that there are no visible disruptions. Another challenge that the wood grain wrap on the horizontal trim has to be removed. The piece wrapped in leather so it matches the factory installed options. This was a challenge because there was no gap left in the factory on top of the wood grain for the leather. I made a jig on the CNC, transferred it onto the router table, and shrunk the actual factory piece by the thickness of the leather. So once wrapped in leather, it will fit back in this hole. In and done with stitching, courtesy of our in-house upholsterer Tommy Nast, I wrapped the back part and then had it off to work for the stitch work that matches stock, including the seam down the middle. Notice the tight gap-free fit around the whole divider. Actually better than the pictures we found on the internet. The stock remote, set to control either side screen, can now select the stock DVD and feed it to the center screen for ease of integration. Here it seems like a lot of space, the inside of a Dodge Sprinter. Once you put an entire Club Fitters Mad Science lab into it, it gets a lot smaller real quick. Here we see the generator that will run the power to all the tools. It is located where it has minimal impact on the tool storage and minimal linked wire runs to tools it powers. Note the custom forged exhaust system that carries a carbon monoxide out of the rear of the cabin for safety. As we move to the inside of the Sprinter van, you'll notice it's nice, clean, and classy with plenty of storage. The layout leaves room to move safely and follows the Club Fitters order of work promoting safety and efficiency. Since a client would be paying a lot of money to customize an already expensive set of golf clubs, finishing materials such as the synthetic suede shown here, complemented with the toolboxes and cabinetry to create a visual workspace befitting the caliber of sporting goods that we worked on. The rubberized flooring prevents slips and provides cushion to the fitter's feet. Noise is also minimized through these and other materials. This was creative use of space, as we had to work with the Fusion techs to turn a Sprinter van into one of their fitting labs. Fusion Golf Clubs fits all major brand of golf clubs to a client-specific playing style after a 2-hour consult. This is normally done at one of their facilities, but they wanted to have a way to do this on the links during major events. Having built a number of workshops and having taught others how to do this so at the Installer Institute, I knew I would have to maximize the limited interior and accommodate all the tools and support equipment, and do so in a way that followed what they wanted and the finished look they were going for. This picture shows a close-up of the trim bezel to install an iPad into a Mustang Shelby. My motto is plexiglass, it's just not for pretty anymore. Here the plexiglass was used to create both the housing the iPad slides into, as well as the trim bezel that finishes it out and holds it in place. As seen later, the whole assembly will be painted. Plexi was used not only because the ShotBot works it well, it is much stronger than MDF when sharper and crisper edges are desired. Plexi is also more flexible and more durable, a good characteristic for high usage set of parts. Another material used were the multiple neodymium magnets embedded into both pieces. If you notice the white dots around the outside of the plexiglass, that is the holes on the back side the magnets go into and get glued in. They hold the two pieces tightly together with a secure, tight fit, but allow for ease of removal. They also retain the same holding properties indefinitely versus a hinge, latch, or pressure fit method that would degrade through the repeated daily use that they undergo. I came up with an interesting way to mount the tweeters in a donk that I had built for Corey McIntyre of the Buffalo Bills. They were mounted in the front edge of a bar that doubled as an armrest. Plexiglass was used here as well. The two pieces for each of the four handles, a front and back, were produced on the ShotBot and then mated together by drilling and tapping the plexiglass and bolting from the rear. A channel was milled during the production so that the wiring could run inside the two pieces when they were assembled. The two bolts that hold the assembly to the door served as the positive and negative terminals for the tweeters. The plexiglass allowed for the precision fit of the two pieces and provides a strong enough and slightly flexible material to withstand being used to push the door open and pull it closed each and every time someone enters the vehicle, and again when they leave, all while providing a final visual touch of the interior styling. Here are the parts of a sectional enclosure that went into the trunk of Corey McIntyre's donk that I built. The enclosures will bolt rather than screw into place, and in some locations using stock hardware, as they had to be mounted and removed numerous times during the fabrication process. The nut and bolt fastening was chosen over the screws to avoid the stripping of the mount through the repeated removals. The method also facilitates the serviceability of the system as well as the vehicle itself, such as taillight replacement. Here, since we are doing a ground-up restro on a 67 Bronco, which would include an engine upgrade and a healthy audio package, a new underhood power and ground distribution point was called for. I came up with a design that incorporated the vehicle's main power feed as well as other fuse outputs for lighting, audio, and other needs, and also the main ground point. The whole assembly mounts directly on the battery with the same hold-down bars and the battery terminals going through the main bars. The parts were cut out of MDF for test fit and functionality check. Then the actual 3/8" copper parts were machined out of one single plate. The base will be similarly matched from the black piece of plexiglass when finished. This is the DRC for the Audison's latest and greatest digital signal processor, the Bit1. Installed into the center console of a Shelby Mustang, note that the original color and texture was retained on the new part molded to house the DRC. Also note that recessing the style matches that of the gear shifter directly behind it. Finally, touches like the polished metal ring fabricated to emulate the one holding its shifter boot in place completes the factory look. Less than an inch separates the shifter boot from the DRC, so any overlooked detail will tip off the most casual observers that the DRC doesn't belong. In this example, even a Ford engineer would walk away puzzled that he hadn't previously seen the factory option. This is the same Mustang showing the iPad installed into the dash. The custom trim bezel attaches with an embedded ring of neodymium magnets. This allows for a very clean factory look and makes removal and insertion of the iPad a breeze. Fit and finish of the dash trim surroundings on the iPad blends totally with the stock center console and is actually superior to the factory in terms of gap width. Paint is also a dead match. The iPad fitting the Bit1 delivers a 1-2 punch for those craving the most current and sought after technologies. This is another example of an iPad install, this time into a 2012 Ford Harley-Davidson truck. The stock radio is retained and the iPad goes through the radio's aux input, sitting horizontal for maximum flexibility with its apps. The mount is bonded to the center stack trim fascia, and the finished assembly, as well as the other two trim pieces on the steering wheel that match it, were repainted to guarantee its consistency. The main mount housing and the trim retaining ring are machined from plexiglass, with body filler used to smooth out. The neodymium magnets are used to hold the two pieces together. Although the iPad will be used the vast majority of the time, there may be quick trips where it is not used. In these instances, where the iPad is not present, the mount's backplate allows for full access of the stock radio and to the 3 buttons located above it. This maintains complete functionality of the truck's existing features and equipment, while integrating the tablet to an ease to use and cosmetically appropriate fashion. This was done for a client that wanted rear seat entertainment in a BMW X6, but did not want the usual factory and aftermarket pods that hang out over the headrest and are necessary by the active head restraint system in the vehicle. So I modified the seat back, built a housing for the LCDs that followed the shape and the curves of the seat, and angled the LCDs for the proper viewing angle. The color and the grain of the vinyl wrapping the piece matched the seat back below, and BMW's rondelle was added to complete the factory look. The cargo area in the same BMW, shown here, the factory head unit was retained and fed into an Autosym 5-channel amp, easily powered by the stock alternator. The amp and a pair of subwoofers were stowed underneath the factory floor trim, which was modified to allow proper ventilation for the amp, allow the subs to be heard while protected, and to follow the look of the install underneath. The trim fascia for the amp rack and the subwoofer enclosure blends with the rest of the vehicle in the color and the grain of the vinyl. The mesh follows the styling cues of the outside, and the white sandwich layer is the backlit plexiglass to create a soft lighting glow like the theater lighting on the rest of the vehicle. The X6 does not come with a spare tire, and so no functionality of the vehicle is impaired. The battery, located more or less under the center of the mesh panel, is accessible by lifting up the top layer of the trim. I built this car for a local client. It's a Bentley Continental Super Sports that received audio upgrades. The stock radio system was retained. You'll notice throughout the photos that the overall interior cosmetic theme would be followed with the upgrades. On the Super Sports, Bentley removes the rear seating as a weight reduction method. Since the back seat was already gone, I decided to put the subs here, as opposed to taking up trunk space and losing the output fighting through the steel of the rear deck. Alpine's new shallow mount 10-inch subs will let me keep the whole enclosure and the mount for the Bit 1 processor, even with the factory vertical trim. The suede panels on this piece were modified to become the grills for the output of the subs, which are actually downfiring. The Bit 1 was wrapped in a 3M Dynoc with a carbon fiber finish to follow the look of the dash and other locations throughout the car. The diamond tuck material on the back wall was used as back of the sub enclosure as well. With the stock carbon fiber sway bar reinstalled, the trim fascia uses the same black and camel vinyls as the rest of the interior, with suede accents to match the stock panels below and also the headliner. The orange stitch diamond tuck pattern was carried into the enclosure's interior, with special attention paid to the alignment of the positioning of the diamonds, and the 3M carbon fiber Dynoc on the Bit 1 and the triangular accents next to it follow the sway bar and the seat backs in the immediate vicinity, down to the same diagonal alignment. In the trunk, I chose to put the 3 Alpine amplifiers. The amp rack consumes essentially none of the space in the boot, while improving the original look of the drab carpet that Bentley installed there. This is our shop demo vehicle called the Audio Assault vehicle. This vehicle features, among other things, a 10,000 watt Kicker Warhorse amplifier to feed it. The original alternator was replaced with an Ohio generator 200 amp upgrade, along with a second one. The tight confines of the engine compartment allowed us, or I should say, made us relocate to the opposite side of the belt system, making custom brackets. It was a tight fit. This is the back of the Audio Assault vehicle we were just speaking about. The careful masking of the tape of the rear's master trim fascia. More time spent here pays a lot off, less time cleaning up, and ensures a better fit since there's no extra material in the joints and the seams when it comes time to do the bodywork. This is the same fascia after the resin has dried and the sanding and the initial primer is done. Notice on all the pieces, polyester primer is sprayed in block sand and ready for initially for paint, like I said before, but it's actually getting vinyl. It's to ensure that there's no imperfections under the vinyl when it comes time to wrapping. This piece in the back was one of the most complicated pieces I've had to wrap in a very long time. It's one large complex piece of vinyl. Time, patience, experience, and okay, a lot of harsh language all pay off in the long run. Much of the vehicle's interior retained the factory vinyl color, so I carried that theme into the back of the vehicle as well. This is the final piece before the weather strip around the whole outside was installed. There's bolts around the big amplifier on top, and there's bolts around the batteries that you don't see. And then the whole outside is held down by the factory weather seal. A lot of work resulting in a finished panel that looks simple and clean, as it were molded out of plastic by thousands, like factory panels and emulates. And the Warhorse, plus another pair of normal amps, the batteries, pair of speakers, and eventually the shop logo over the batteries will be displayed, all without looking forced or out of place. This is the sill plate door jamb area on our shop vehicle. It's a 2008 GM Kodiak. Looked like a great place to put the passive crossovers from the jail components. Other than being a dead space, it was a pocket before we simply cut a few spot welds out and had a ton of space to put this area. We lifted the truck about 4 to 5 inches and put 22-inch rims and tires on it with big knobby tires. So it's about chest level once you look into it. And as you're going to see by the future pictures, it's kind of a billboard once you open the doors right in front of you. Kind of brands who we are and what we do. This picture shows the two plexiglass pieces that go back loaded into the same pieces I just showed you in the prior picture. You'll see the Team X on the bottom right hand corner. Once again, made on the CNC machine and can be duplicated very easy. They will be back loaded with lighting behind them. Notice the plexiglass used once again, not only for strength, but for the crisp lines once it's routed and painted. The MDF would break down over time, or it'd be hard to prime in there, so it eliminates all of that by using the acrylic. As you can see from this photo, it's one of those panels that you build, you step back and look at, and say to yourself, oh boy, what have I done? It took 4 people and about 45 minutes apiece to wrap each one of these panels. It goes in about 6 inches and equals about 200 degrees of radius once it's all done. If it wasn't for the 4 people, it would have never happened. It did end up fine. No wrinkles, no seams, no problem whatsoever. The next picture you'll see the panel wrapped, and anyone who has ever done any vinyl work will understand the degree of difficulty it took. You also see the yellow piece of plexiglass sitting on top of the piece. You're looking at the back of it at this point. There's all quarter 20 drilled and tapped to hold that plexiglass in. The only MDF used is just that very top piece right there. The rest of it's all fiberglass and plexiglass. This is the final picture after it was all completed. Note the attention to detail by the top line of the vinyl. Those are 2 separate pieces. The top piece actually goes from the kick panel area clear back behind the second door. It's all one piece wrapped in vinyl. And then the matching line below it that goes into the sill plate area. Notice the attention to detail of the line around the black line on the yellow plexiglass, how it follows the black line of the vinyl area. The crossovers are actually set on black acrylic, and there are LEDs that we took all the crossovers apart and added LEDs into it that light up as the door opens on each side. The next couple of photos will show just a couple of novelty things that I've come up over the years. The first one I actually helped with from a coworker. Something simple, just made on the CNC. We had a task of painting, I think it was 52 lug nut covers. Using the CNC once again to make stands instead of having to make individual stands or try to do individually or laying down a piece of paper. Just something simple, quirky that we come up with. The next one is a holder for a material that we call gray stuff. It's a 2-part adhesive that we use a ton to adhere plastic to fiberglass to plexiglass and all that, but it was just a simple holder made to make it quick and easy so the installers always know where it's at, where it goes, how it goes, etc. Just once again, something quirky, something simple, but kind of separates the men from the boys sometimes. This picture shows a set of air horns we did on our Kodiak show truck as well. We try to use factory bolts whenever possible, grade 8 stainless steel, whatever we can find that's suitable for the job and for the right application. All the wiring we try to run through factory locations. We don't like to put holes in the back of people's cabs or where they don't belong. Just a normal set of air horns that everybody does. We just do a step above and beyond. In the next couple of photos, you'll see a typical door panel installation. This one happens to be on one of our vehicles we did at the shop. No speakers in the door, just some logos on the bottom of the door. The first thing that we always try to start with, and I put in all my installers' heads, is fastening. Any kind of fastener goes in the door. You'll see a 1/4 riv nut in this case that was drilled and then riv nutted to the door. We try not to use any kind of screws into metal, no drywall screws into metal, into plastic. It's just not how the manufacturer would do it. It's kind of what we believe in. Once that part's done, you'll notice the 1/4 bolt on the bottom left corner of that wood panel. And then the wood panel also set inside the plastic panel with the holes drilled in it. It's prepped, it's ground down, it's wiped down, there's holes drilled in it, and it's ready to be bonded the wood to the plastic to make it one. We use gray stuff that we had talked about in the slide before this. Once the gray stuff is dry, it's hard, we grind it down, body work it, and polyester the front of the door to make it look like a smooth door that's ready for either paint or dye. In this case, it's getting wrapped, but it's the same level. In the back of the door, you'll see the gray stuff coming through the holes and around the edges. At this point, I will mix up more of the gray stuff and go around the whole back of the entire wood piece just to make sure that absolutely nothing comes apart. One of my biggest pet peeves in what we do and what I do in this industry is comebacks, and it's a little precautionary things like this that keeps comebacks from happening. This is an iPad integrated into a new Mustang Shelby. The stock radio was eliminated entirely, making the iPad the only source other than the iPod that we put into the glove box. It provides a GPS as shown, as well as stored music and video through the iPod function, live music and video through the internet radio, Pandora, YouTube, etc. As they say, there's an app for that. Volume and other preamp functions are handled by the AutoSense Bit 1 processor, which also embodies all the latest digital signal processing tools. While the system's technology may be high-end, complex, ease of use is ensured. A few taps on the iPad touchscreen and a twist of the well-placed volume knob is all it takes. We refer to this as a Donk Extreme style. Another iPad, this time in an 87 Caprice. Seemingly overrun parts of Florida, Donks typically feature cheap glasswork, multiple booming subs, overdriven inexpensive PA drivers, and not much else. Here we have the Donk's tech-savvy brother. This one also features the Harman's MS8 processor. The display is visible just below the iPad and forward of the power window switches. Doubling up on the newest and hottest technology installed, the iPad feeds into an Alpine head unit, giving the car CD, DVD, iPod, and Bluetooth as well. The custom center console contains more plexiglass construction as well as materials and finishes to match the upholstery and other parts in the car interior. I built this trunk slash, I guess you'd call rear seat package area in this Corvette Stingray. Had a pair of subs, a pair of coaxes, and a 5-channel amp, neatly and efficiently stowed. I kept the brilliant bright yellow paint from the outside, added some curved sporty fiberglass to kind of follow the outside of the car. Customer loved it. The trunk closed, you couldn't see a thing. It did end up following into the center console and into the dash, but once it was in the back, out of the way of thieves, out of the eyes I should say. A great install. Everything bolted in, fit and finished, better than GM would have done back in 1969 when the Corvette was built. This was a stock head unit retention in a Toyota truck. A simple OE style amp rack under part of the back seat. Full use of the vehicle space is retained, and the stealth install improves upon the factory cosmetics. This project is what Brian Schmidt would call production high-end. Design the desired shape on the ShopBot, have it shoot out a number of them, and then assemble your PlayStation 3 housing and cut out any panels you want. Minimal sanding, etc. needed. Plus, you have the shape for the future use, with or without modification, which we have done since. Inside details showing the fit of the PlayStation 3, and room for airflow on either side. You can also see the top cutaway for access, viewing, and airflow. Production high-end through use of the new, to this industry anyway, technology of our ShopBot. It essentially becomes an additional fabricator who does exactly what you tell him. and remembers everything. Jigs wear out over time with use, and if modified, they stay modified. A file never wears out. It can be modified and restayed without losing the original one. This is a custom fabricated fuse holder, built from scratch out of plastic on the ShopBot. This handles power and fusing to the same number of strobes and other lighting added to the Kodiak. Creating a dedicated fuse panel with its own power feed greatly facilitates wiring and serviceability on the additional electronics when dealing with this many items. Three-step photo showing fab, prep, and complete stages of installing an LCD into a glove box door. After all the build-out, bonding, and sanding is done, the piece is hit with a good coat of poly primer prior to vinyl being wrapped. This gives one good uniform surface for the adhesive and prevents any reaction from any of the other various materials underneath with adhesive. Plus, if during the wrap you need to pull the vinyl back and re-adhere it for any reason, you will not risk pulling any of the body filler up or such loose with adhesive. This is the initial stages of the build in a tire well of the new Chevrolet Camaro. Chevrolet got rid of the spare in almost all instances of the new Camaro I've seen and decided to locate the battery here. Shown is the early stages of what will be a custom highlighted amp rack. The battery is held secure, access is taken into account, and a large Tsunami intelligent capacitor is under the MDF behind the battery. The first shot shows the floor trim complete with the carrier style folding wings to allow it to fit into the vehicle through the tiny Camaro trunk opening. Cutting them on the CNC ensures a perfect fit. Wrapping them with one piece of carpet hides the fact that they are separate pieces once installed. In the second shot is everything complete and lit up. 3 JL 10-inch subwoofers in a stealth box with a ready-to-paint finish was retained from a previous build and shot the same white as the amp rack to match the car's finish. As the car received some healthy performance upgrades from our performance division, we followed suit with the install the per client requested, with some painted surfaces, lighting, mesh, and display of the amp and capacitor, and finished it with branding it as we always do. This is the battery rack we did for the Donk. Since it will be predominantly show car per the client specifications, having a healthy dose of additional power on tap is a good idea. As I was taking up most of the trunk area and wanted the battery somewhat accessible, we welded a metal frame for protection and snug it under the chassis. It filled it with a big, really big Odyssey dry cell. The battery tray bolted firmly, securely into the chassis, wiring into and out of the grommet via the ABS panels, Tex Flex, secured and fused. Also note the quick connects mounted to the left, facilitating the hookup of a power supply at shows where the power is available. This is a speaker adapter that was made for a 2011 Scion TC. I spent the time to draw on CAD the entire bracket to match the factory speaker within 5/1000 of an inch. You can see the pieces that it took to make the final piece. Under normal everyday installs, it would not be practical to spend so much time to do on a single bracket. But we developed a system in these Scions and made it exclusive to our local Scion Toyota dealer that we call the JL Audio Edition TC. The front doors have a factory 3-way system in them, so I chose to do the C5 JL Audio 3-way system. This is the mount for the 4-inch mid-range speaker in the door. What makes it unique is the speaker sits in front of the metal of the door instead of the norm where the speaker mounts to the door. So the bracket had to mount to the exact existing factory mounting holes and mount dead center behind the factory grille in the door, preferably putting the speaker close as said to the grille. Since I did this, I also put the 6.5-inch mid-bass driver in the factory spot in the same fashion as I did with the mid-range. The tweeter also mounted in the stock location behind the factory grille. The passive crossover also went in the door, on the cabin side, not the cavity side, and a custom mount made of ABS plastic. I am proud to say that all these speakers and the crossover went into the door with all the factory fasteners and behind the factory door panel. Take note of the attention to detail. Even the tabs for the 4-inch driver are recessed into the mount and look like Scion built it. This is as stock gets and can be reproduced at will. Another benefit of the CNC. Having been promoted to general manager, not only of Extreme, but also our sister home theater store, The Experts, I was tasked with designing the store's new look and then making it happen. Different type of project and a larger scale than most 12-volt install projects, but a lot of the basics are the same. You still have to make each section of the store blend with itself, lend itself to the concept you're demonstrating, and then needs to be effectively demonstrate that idea in a way that the clients can see it happening in their own home and they'll want to buy it. Choice of materials, techniques, serviceability, functionability, and durability all come into play, as they would in a vehicle. Plus, you have to adhere to code and withstand inspections. Early out in the build, we gutted the building all the way down to the brick walls. You'll notice in the picture, the theater room that we built was designed all in CAD and designed around acoustics. The 3-step ceiling works with the acoustics of the room to keep coupling down. The room incorporated a 152-inch screen with motorized sides, $80,000 projector, $30,000 worth of seats, all to make it happen in someone's home. From this demonstration of what we can do, customers can also see what can happen in their own home. The whole store is based on vignettes on each side of the store, letting them see what can happen in a living room, kitchen, bedroom, theater, office. The whole thing is an experience that no one will forget. This is the fabrication room at our install facility. When Matt offered me the job as bay manager, I toured the store and gave him a list of what needed improvement and the tools we need to accomplish what he wanted to accomplish. Proper fabrication capabilities were a great chunk of this list. He didn't bat an eye, and I soon found myself having to do, or I should say, being allowed to, design and build an air-conditioned room, dust management and plenty of room to keep things neat, clean, and safe. The enclosed nature also keeps the dust inside, resulting in less cleanup to the vehicles themselves in the main bay. Noise is also reduced in the main bay and the showroom. Lots of overhead lighting permit better visual inspection of the work and again promote safety. 2 entry points give access to the various points of the main bay, and the double doors allows large materials and finish projects out easily. Space and layout means several techs can work at the same time without bumping into each other, and that can be disastrous consequences on a number of fronts. Plenty of workspace surrounds each tool. There is also a lot of cabinet space at hand. Power and air is also available in multiple locations. Multiple router stations minimize bit changing, which speeds up production. Also note that the routers and the chop saw are in wide recesses below the main counter, which permits the tools to come up or down to with plenty of work clearance. I find this not only reduces the wear and damage of the counters, but makes it work itself easier since there is more space to maneuver and see. And of course a ShopBot CNC machine, which I use so heavily. Next to it, near the door, is a computer station, which also flashes alarm modules, has access to tech support sites like DirectText, AllData Pro, etc., and serves various other functions for the technicians. Basically, I had to build up what I was going to build in, I guess you could say. Another really fun project for me was an old VW microbus that we did from scratch. Below, I made plexiglass ribs for the roof, which we then attached after scuffing the metal to allow for better adhesion. These ribs were done on the CNC, since uniformity would be important when the ceiling was attached. The ribs serve as attachment points for the ceiling and allow uniform and ample load distribution to keep the ceiling from sagging. They also help with the overall rigidity of the vehicle. Here we have some bendy wood that has been inserted into the lips at the top of the sidewalls on either side as part of the attachment process. It is then secured to the plexiglass ribs in the middle, which then forces the wood into shape against the ribs. This gives a clean, uniform ceiling and puts all the fasteners into the middle strip, where they can be later concealed to present an even cleaner and more aesthetically appealing result when finished. The main rib, along with the secondary rib, which is stood off for the theater lighting, is also visible. The channel CNC'd into the secondary rib houses all the bolts, with the channel itself providing the means to hide the bolts later on. This photo shows much of the interior skeleton and panels during the construction. This was like creating a small AV room in a house and echoed the Build It the Experts, as I had to create the room, so to speak, and then populate it, which is what comes down to an interior completioner of an RV, coach, limo, and the like. You only have so much space and no more. What you do with it and how well you work within determines it, the usability and the finished product. Serviceability and the fitment of the panels to each other is critical. If you do this better, the build goes easier, and after the fact, any work, service to the system or vehicle itself, add-ons, or even routine maintenance becomes a breeze. Also, choosing fasteners that hold up to repeated is the key, and the panels will come in and out with no problem. This is a finished shot of the bus completed and in action. It has been transformed from an older, more utilitarian people's bus with the Spartan amenities at best to a comfortable, well-appointed coach, and still retains a classic feel important to the VW owners. Alright, there you have my 20-year career wrapped up in 46 minutes. I apologize for the timely manner of it, but there's a lot of information to put in there. I'd like to thank a lot of people that's helped me along the way. My wife, Stephanie, my kids, for the moral support and the support along the years. Matthew Brown, the owner of Extreme Performance, has given me a wonderful opportunity to take his company and take it to the next level. Zach Abbas and Pippa Dinsdale for helping me on the book itself and the material in this video. Without them, there wouldn't be no Install of the Year presentation. So thank you to everybody else, and probably most importantly in the end is Mobile Electronics Magazine. Without them, with the drive they have to make our industry better, we wouldn't have any of this. So peace, and we'll see you next time.